How many of you college graduates stayed active in your university's alumni group? Well, if you did, you know the value of relationships, of connections, professionally certainly, but personally as well. My guest today, Stacie Hyatt, is the founder of Society for Alumni Club Leadership. That's SACL. And now that organization supports and manages some of the most prestigious university alumni groups in the country and their chapters. Stay tuned.
Welcome to our podcast, Doing It Right. This podcast reveals authentic stories from successful leaders doing it right. It's about their journey to become a leader, their choices, motivations, and lessons. In essence, how they built successful personal brands. Your host is Valerie Sokolosky, author of 8 leadership books and nationally known as an authority on executive presence and personal branding. Let's get started. Here's Valerie.
So, welcome back. I've got my coffee. I hope you do. You know, this purpose of the show, Doing It Right, is all about bringing guests on who are just real people. They walk their talk. They keep their integrity as they have been extremely successful. And my guest today is one such woman. Let me tell you about Stacie Hyatt. She is a woman who, believe it or not, has a bioengineering degree and ended up doing the work that she's now going to tell you about. So I just want to say welcome, Stacie, to the show.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you very much, Valerie.
It's an interesting topic. And when I met you and you tried to explain what you did, it kind of went whoosh right over me. I couldn't quite grasp it. So I researched you and we had our pre-interview. And what I now realize is that you work with these leadership volunteers in alumni groups for universities around the country. So I'm going to stop there and just kind of net it out to us. What does that look like?
It's a really good question. It's not a space that many people are really aware of, so I get this question quite a bit. Basically, universities around the world, in fact, like to keep up with their graduates. They do so through their alumni organizations. Many of them are quite organized, and they have chapters or clubs in different geographic areas around the country. They might even have clubs, organizations around special interest topics such as clean energy. But regardless, they are really trying to keep their alumni engaged. Well, all of that work, all of the work to run those groups, those affinity groups, those geographic groups, is all done on a volunteer basis by the alumni themselves.
That's not easy.
No, it really isn't. If you think about it, most people have career obligations, family obligations, obviously, that take priority over any volunteer activities. So for an organization that is entirely run by volunteers, no matter how well-intentioned or how capable, what you end up with is a lot of variability, not quite as dependable and such.
Okay, so I'm really tracking here. I went to Oklahoma State University, and through the years, we've moved. I married an IBMer, and that meant I've been moved. So I didn't land any place close enough, really, to get too involved. But since we landed in Dallas, there is a group here, an alumni group, and I wish I had gone more regularly. But I know what this is. I know what you're talking about now. What's the most difficult part of what you do for these groups?
So the hardest part is these volunteer groups have been managed, as I said, by the alumni themselves, by volunteers. Over time, people's available time for these types of things tend to have been diminished. And the hardest thing that I deal with coming into it is some older perspectives that in order to volunteer, you must suffer. And if you are not suffering during your volunteer exercise, then you're not doing it right.
Now, wait a minute. You have to tell me what that means. I can't imagine that that's a perspective.
It really is. And by suffer, I say that somewhat lightheartedly. But some people truly believe that a very viable belief out there that when you are volunteering, you are supposed to do all the work. Now, a more modern view of that is you are volunteering to help make sure the work gets done.
I see.
And so an organization that leans more towards that latter perspective is more likely to engage a third party whose job it is to make sure that they are strategically moving in the right direction, that someone is handling the administrative back office, that answers the phone for the members, and that does the bookkeeping so there are financial statements for the board meetings. So that's what we do. We help provide everything from the strategic direction to the execution of the day-to-day administrative and bookkeeping functions for these clubs so that their volunteers spend their time with each other and dreaming up fabulous things to do to support the universities.
So I'm smiling really big because putting it in my perspective, it's almost like you're saying your organization is the ultimate VA, virtual assistant. Does that kind of resonate? I mean,
it does. And
you take all the pressure off.
That's our goal.
Right.
So one of the big challenges with these volunteers is they're there because their heart, in their heart, they want to be there, right? This is something that means something to them. It was an experience that they had that they are grateful for. Often their children might be going to the same university, so it's just something they share in the family. But it is very hard to do all the small things that make the experience an enjoyable one for people attending the events that people have. So that's where we do come in. Our role really helps not only the experience for all those in the organization to be a very positive one that enhances whatever the goals of the Alumni Club are, whether it's charitable, whether it's supporting the university with interviews for admissions and things of that nature. We make it easy so the volunteers will stay and they will enjoy it. Often the other situation is they get so buried by the administrivia, right? Making name tags and and trying to deal with the small things. Right. In the polish, it makes a difference at the end, but it's a lot of work to actually do it, that they tend to get burned out and then they leave. And then you don't have the benefit at all of their participation or their vision or their network.
That is such a niche. So tell us, how in the world did you go from, as we did our pre-interview, having an MBA from Wharton and a bioengineering degree? How do you go from that to what you're now doing very successfully globally?
That's another good question I get often. Most of my career has been in implantable medical technology, but I have also, in parallel with my career, have had a passion for alumni groups. They do such amazing things professionally, personally, within the community, and for education to begin with. I'm very passionate about this group that I have always been involved in the background. I'm currently president of the Wharton alumni here in Dallas-Fort Worth. So I understand the pain involved and very much appreciate when some of these issues can be taken off our plate so that we can continue to recruit and keep very good volunteers. But the reason I took this path over what I was doing before is mainly because there are a lot of fantastic professionals in the medical device space. I still love it, still a passion, but there was nobody in this space. So I published a book called Fully Funded, Outrageously Successful Ways to Fund an Alumni Chapter, and hit the speaking circuit. It is the only reference manual for volunteers running alumni clubs out there. So,
well, tell us that again, and it'll be on the banner. What's the name of the book? Because that would be something from all of my friends who are in organizations like you're working with that people should read.
Thank you. It is called Fully Funded, Outrageously Successful Ways to Fund an Alumni Chapter. However, it is applicable for pretty much any such volunteer groups and includes quite a bit of information about benefits and pitfalls and such associated with being a nonprofit organization as well.
Would do well to read it. That's really interesting and good. And you are a woman in the community. I know that about you. You're very involved with organizations. Tell us about particularly your work with the Titans.
Oh my goodness, I'm glad you asked about that. Tech Titans is a wonderful organization. It is the technology organization for North Texas. It focuses on really elevating technology companies, technology users, and being a kind of a thought engine for what's next coming down the pike. And I have been very fortunate to have been on the board for 8 years now with them, leading different aspects, including the Health Technology Forum, amongst other things. But one of the things I enjoy the most is having an opportunity to have been a judge for the annual awards. Now we will get up to, I guess this is pre-COVID, but up to about 800 people show up for these awards. And they are an incredible way to elevate the community. We're looking at CEOs, CIOs, people that are really making a difference in technology, but also making a difference through their leadership.
So give me an example of an award that was just given to someone, and what was the final reason that person got the award?
Well, they're different. They really vary each year. There's about 15 standard awards. And they, like I mentioned, it might be a CIO award, it might be a CEO award, it might be a community advocate award. We have a Hall of Fame award every year. And one of our good friends, Valerie Freeman, was actually the recipient of the Hall of Fame award last year.
Okay.
So it is about having an impact on the community.
I see. Okay. That's awesome. So how has COVID made a difference in your business?
Boy, has it ever. On one side, we took a real hit. As you can imagine, I described that a lot of alumni organizations get together because they are geographically based. Mm-hmm. Well, geographically based groups enjoy physically getting together. That came to an abrupt halt. Right. As you can imagine, it really hurt those alumni groups as well, because people pay dues that help support their operations, sure, but they do so if there's things to go to. So some of them did a good job and were able to pivot somewhat on Zoom. However, conversely, the groups that I referred to as affinity groups, for instance, an entrepreneurial network from a university or a clean energy network. Those aren't geographically based. They are worldwide across their entire alumni base. It's just more of a special interest that brings them together. Well, surprisingly, COVID really enhanced the use of programs like Zoom and GoToMeeting and WebEx, and it caused people who resisted using that in the past to have to get on board, regardless of age, regardless of applicability to that particular space. But by doing so, these affinity groups, those that have truly embraced that, now had the option to reach all of their networks with each one of their programs. And so that has soared. Some of the groups are doing better than ever before. Isn't
that interesting, Stacie? So all of us can relate to Zoom. Most of us are zoomed out at this point. But having said that, there's a lot of positives that have come out of, well, positivity is one of my strengths finders. So I'm going to go there because I think there are some good things technologically that have brought us now together. What's interesting about Zoom is that it's easy to use, and many of the other platforms are too. What is also interesting and difficult about those platforms is then people feel like, and my expertise, as you know, is presence. And so I've been getting calls like, well, what do I wear? Well, how do I act? Well, where should the camera be? Well, what should the lighting be? There's a whole nother industry that sort of spun out, if you will, in my business by doing webinars on how to show up on these meetings. And we could talk a lot about that.
But it's critical.
It's critical.
It is a whole new world. It's very much different than in person.
And doesn't it say something, I'm sorry, audience, but it does. It says something about who you are and your ability to communicate. And that is all about presence and brand, presence and brand. Who are you and how do you show up? So I'd like to just tell us a little bit about Stacie. Tell us about Stacie.
Oh, gracious. Where do you start?
That's a wide open, isn't it?
I think the best way to describe me is ball caps to ball gowns.
I love that.
I come from a family that's a hardworking family, dedicated, and one side of the family is actually a farm community and very hardworking, so not afraid of doing a little hard work. In fact, over COVID, I installed my own retaining wall on my property. And but on the other side, I really enjoy people. I enjoy being with them. I love the opportunities to lift up others. I love such as the Tech Titans Awards. It's a black tie affair when we have those in person.
Dressy.
So back to the ball gowns.
Yeah.
Enjoy that just as much and everything in between. So it's really hard for me to fill out some of those personality tests because I can answer yes to so many of the options.
Well, I'm sitting here looking at your beautiful face and picturing you in a ball cap and then a hammer on your side and then putting on your black ball gown.
So the flannel shirt and a little bit.
Interesting. Stacie, what kind of a boss are you?
Boy, it's probably a good question for my team.
I should have asked them. Go
Probably
ahead.
so. It'd be interesting to hear the answers. Actually, I'm pretty in touch with the team I work with. We are very close in our day-to-day work. I think I'm very fair, but I tend to be pretty exacting. So one of the things that's really important about my business is how I describe to the team that each person on our team providing these administrative services really has to do so under the brand of our company and following policies and procedures that we've developed. And I explain it very much like if we are to have a strong brand as a company while having many people employed by us, our particular type of model has to be a lot more like a restaurant, for instance, where you get hired into the restaurant. Maybe you're the chef, but you do have to make the recipes of the restaurant.
That's a great analogy.
You can't show up at Macaroni Grill with your own list or change up the recipes and surprise the guests because those guests are going to Macaroni Grill because they know what they're going to get and they're looking forward to it. So I do explain that we are not like an antique mall where everybody has their own booth and it's completely different and a whole different experience with each individual person and topic. So that's, I think, one of the things that they would probably focus on is how I work very closely with everyone to understand how to replicate the brand.
Well, that is so important. I call it the 3 C's: clarity, constancy, and consistency. And that means that, as you said, every person that works with you has to have those 3 things. Or guess what? One goose is going to be flying off and out of formation, and then guess what? It's your brand that suffers. And that's not easy. That's not easy for leaders, Stacie, to disseminate down into the organization. And yet stay, and here's the point, who they are.
Yes.
But you have your own policies and procedures. You're the one that writes the paycheck. I get tickled sometimes when I'll be coaching someone and they'll say, well, if the leader just understood this or that or whatever, and sometimes I want to say, and I never do, who signs the paycheck? If that's the way it's going, that's kind of the way it's going. It's what you signed up for.
Well, it gives us all a stronger opportunity, too. If our brand is stronger, then we're going to have more consistent work coming in.
Yes.
And that's something I try to explain to everybody, that this is something that it enhances all of us. It doesn't resonate with everybody, though. You're right. It's something that we have to work on.
Well, and that leads to when I come to work for your company, I need to believe in the company and the vision of the company and the person who's running the company. Otherwise, there's going to be a disconnect. So those are really some good tips. Have there been any lessons that you've learned through the years, Stacie, to share with other people?
Oh my goodness, they are numerous, too numerous to count. I think one of the things that I have really learned and ingrained from a marketing perspective is the importance of evolving.
Evolving, the importance of evolving.
Yeah,
Tell us more.
Anything you knew it yesterday. Tomorrow is different. It's a whole new day. The world can look very different. Your knowledge may have applied yesterday, but be willing to evolve, be willing to grow. And for me, trying to maintain a consistent brand, consistency among very different personalities that we're fortunate to work with in our company, but also maintain an openness to how we need to continue to evolve to be an even better partner for all of our clients.
It's no small task for leaders to work with all kinds of other people who may or may not think like you do. That's why leadership is so important. If there's one part of leadership for anyone, Stacie, that you would say, if all leaders would just remember to fill in the blank.
Be straightforward with folks. You're not going to always get it right. If you pretend you always are going to get it right, people aren't going to believe you anyway on your team. So I think part of leadership is being willing to say, you know what, that was my call and it was the wrong one, guys. Really could have done that differently, and appreciate you working with me through it. But acknowledging where you could do things better. I think that's something that you have to be comfortable with to be authentic.
I am so glad you brought that up. And again, back to COVID, one of the things I'm finding, Stacie, is that leaders are becoming so much more transparent. Put me on Zoom long enough, give me the challenges long enough, and I'm going to kind of go back to what brung me, right? And that's a really good thing. There are so many good examples, and you're certainly one of them. I'm going to ask you a silly question. What is a talent you wish, of all the things you already have, what's a talent you wish you had and you don't?
I wish I could sing.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. And why?
So, I'm always amazed at what some people's beautiful voices sound like and how they can communicate, feelings and thoughts so effectively. I am one of those shower divas, but no one should be subject to having to hear it, unfortunately. But yes,
awesome.
If I could do something that I can't right now, it would be sing.
Oh, that's beautiful. You've given us a lot of really interesting tips. Is there one thing in closing, Stacie, that you would want for particularly women business owners to learn from you as a woman business owner? What would that be?
I think to be fearless.
Fearless.
There's always going to be somebody, a woman or not, that's going to not like your idea. For instance, my company, you highlighted something interesting in the beginning, the transition that I went through from being an executive in the implantable medical space to doing what I think is really important in this particular space that didn't have any leadership. A lot of people in the space where I came from would say things like, how's that going? So when are you going to get back to real work?
Oh, interesting.
And so no matter, where you come from, whatever your background is, you're going to find some naysayers or folks that just don't see the vision. And I think just be fearless and move forward. And I heard a talk done on leadership on CEOs, and one characteristic of a successful CEO that really stuck with me. And it wasn't education or it wasn't intelligence. It actually said the successful CEO just gets up and dusts off every time they're knocked down. They're the ones that cross the finish line. Everybody gets knocked down. Maybe more than once or twice. But the ones that actually accomplish something, get things done, are the ones that got up, knocked that dust off, and started moving forward again. And that really resonated with me. So I think I'd like to impart that thought to someone else.
And that's a great thought. And you did that. You had so many challenges. I mean, coming from just starting something that there was nothing there and seeing that vision, which is one aspect of leadership that's so wonderful. And you've got it, visionary. So thank you so much for being on the show today, Stacie.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And again, her book is
Fully Funded, Outrageously Successful Ways to Fund an Alumni Chapter, applicable to pretty much all nonprofit or volunteer groups, found on Amazon.
There you go. Everything's found on Amazon, Stacie, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, before we go, I just want to kind of end by saying leadership is an ocean topic. And as our guest and all my guests do, they find a niche. They find something that maybe either hasn't been done before or it's been done, but you can do it differently. And so it's just so important in today's world to find your niche, even if you are working within a company. What is it? What's your brand? What do you do better than or different from other people who kind of sort of do what you do? I had to find that, and I figured out long ago what I can own and what I know is so important are the people skills. And that's what this show is about, building relationships authentically. Until next time, stay authentic. Bye for now. Okay, here's my Valerieism for today. Every launch starts as inspired but imperfect action. Let me say it again. Every launch starts as inspired but imperfect action. It's really simple. If you've got an idea and you just sit on it forever and never launch, you've robbed the world of something that could be really wonderful. So don't worry about, oh, is it the right time? Do I have the right resources? If you've got the right idea, just do it, but do it right. That's my Valerieism for now.
Thanks for listening. To receive Valerie's voice, free monthly leadership tips, and to learn more about her leadership programs and coaching, visit her website, valerieandcompany.com. Next week, we'll be here again to inspire, engage, and equip you with teachable points of view from successful leaders who have been doing it right. Until then, lead authentically.